So, good afternoon. This is we're now 10 minutes late, so now we have to run really fast to do a lot of important work in a short amount of time. Before I get started, I want to thank Kelly and her team here from MSG Bank and all of what they've done to get us open again. And then you all had a chance, you'll hear from him later on. I wanted to thank Santiago and Mansour and the team from IVP here. You'll hear about them in a little bit and see their product. But let's go to the first slide. So we have a busy agenda covering a lot, and we're going to try to cram much into 90 minutes as we can. And then if you're more than welcome to stay afterwards and rotate into the technology, the larger technology showcase from the launch pad, which we'll do up here. The presenters will be downstairs on 10, but you're more than welcome to stay up here, of course, and then we'll relax after it's all over. Let's go to the next slide. So a couple of quick settings for this is to remind you that when we talk about resilience, we're talking about, from our perspective, this issue of pre-disaster and risk mitigation. Why? For those of you who live in Texas, much less in Houston, you don't need to be reminded, but for those who are attending from around the country and to some degree around the world now, we've gone through snow and ice. We are in parts of the state are in the middle of a drought again. All right. Over the past decade, we have been in and out of several disasters in the billions of dollars of impact. But it's not without response, because the state of Texas, for example, along with the federal government, have begun to deploy billions of dollars to start fixing the infrastructure. So part of the message is that we are going to go through a persistent set of disasters. We're going to go through multiple billion-dollar types of events. And while there are funds available for entrepreneurs and innovators, the fact is that it will not always come from the government. And so one of the things that we'll talk about over the next little bit is there is procurement authority for governments to use, and you'll hear from Ron and Pam about that in a minute. But the fact is there's a lot of private sector resources to turn to. Next slide. Oh, well, the slide that you had up, I failed to mention, y'all remember that last year and the year before, we had 3 fires and explosions on the Houston ship channel, right? So the only thing next are the locusts. And all right, so let's talk about financing and where the opportunities are for pre-disaster and risk mitigation. This is an initial study that we conducted over the last year. The fact of the matter is there are billions of dollars of insurance, reinsurance, and non-traditional financing and funding that have begun to emerge. Most of it centered on InsurTech, and InsurTech really has been a product that's focused on how to optimize and assist brokers and carriers in the operations of an insurance or reinsurance. What we're focused on is all the equipment, all the technology, all the data that's on, in, and around public and private sector facilities. So, Kurt, if you'll click. So I wanted you to recognize that there have been an increasing amount of dollars in InsurTech that now has broadened to include this area of technology, equipment, and data sciences. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it off because I'll now join as a panelist, but you had a chance to meet her a little bit earlier. For those of you who are joining us online, I am so honored and so pumped to have Landy Spearman be our moderator today. She is a part of the Innovation Hub's Executive Mentor Program and working day in and day out with all of us. So Landy, thank you so much. This is yours.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. For those of you who are online, just doing a thumbs up to make sure you can hear me as well. Awesome. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Ron. So Richard really said it all. He said that the reason why we are here is not just for what we're facing today or what we've been through in the past. It is what we're moving to in the future. And as you know, just the ability to be able to engage right now where we are, we're able to do that through technology. We're able to do that through innovation. He asked me just to say a few words, and I promise I'll be fast. You told me I have to move it quickly. But I want to pause to really have this real conversation about some of the things that we get to choose. I've been speaking about that today, to choose to engage on and to choose to come together for. The reality is Houston is the #1 most diverse city in the country, okay? So when we think about diversity, my experience has been we normally start with race and gender. The reality is if you think about the diversity of experience, the diversity of thought, or even the diversity of perspective. I have a different perspective, literally just sitting here, than you have of me. So why is that important? Why is that important to innovation? Why is that important to technology, to resilience, to mitigate risk? Because I shared with you that I recently moved, and when I was afraid, when my human side came up, the biological, the right side of my brain kicked in when it was raining last night, and I saw the flooding on this new street, the left side of my brain kicked in and said, okay, so how do I mitigate risk? The logical. So we normally kick in, and I know all of you, I'm looking at y'all, I can't say you all, y'all. Just so you know, Pam and Ron, we've been working on our y'all here, okay? Because we're in Texas. So the conversation that we tend to have first is the left side, the analytical. Let's get to work. Let's get it done. Let's figure it out. And what I invite you to consider is that right side. Who you show up as, the biological, the human side. When we are talking about resilience and we're talking about people, we get to leverage our diversity of perspective. You get to bring yourself to the solution and you get to include others. And so that is a part of why I'm here. I'm super excited to be here because I get to stand and sit next to this gentleman here. So I know I'm supposed to introduce you maybe last, perhaps, right? But when you think about a driving force behind risk mitigation and insurance and resilience and what it takes to truly make a difference, Richard has been such a stand, and it's the reason why we are here. He has also invited Pam. And Pam, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself. And then Ron, if you would please follow. Both of you all are in DC, correct? Pam, let's have you get started.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you so much for those encouraging remarks, because I think we are standing here at the precipice of a movement, a resilience movement, where we can be truly transformational, truly innovative. And I love that we're bringing the technology conversation to the forefront, because we're going to be driving massive changes in the resilience profile across the country. I am Pam Williams. I am currently the executive director of the BuildStrong Coalition, and we are a coalition primarily of insurers, architects, codes and standards folks, as well as state and local emergency managers and firefighters that are dedicated to building a more resilient nation. And I came to the BuildStrong Coalition about 2 years ago after a pretty lengthy stint with the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, focusing on infrastructure and resilience. So I am very, very excited to be here, with my friend Ron with Big City Emergency Managers to be a part of this conversation, because I hope that we can convey to you the opportunity here and truly the limitless expectations that are being set here in Washington through the infrastructure conversation, through the COVID-19 recovery conversation, on how to drive resilience across this country. So I'll turn it over to Ron.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Landy and Richard as well. Geez, I'm very honored to be on here with Pam. And Landy, I'm very jealous of your Southern accent. I really would like to. I need to master that y'all. So someday I'll get there. Again, I'm Ron Prater. I'm the executive director of a small not-for-profit called Big City Emergency Managers. BCM is made up of the emergency managers of 15 of the largest jurisdictions in the country. We cover about 25% of the nation's population. As Pam mentioned, resiliency and mitigation are terms that emergency managers are very familiar with and they're using every day. One of the emergency managers' roles is planning. It's a big part of their role, and resiliency and mitigation are key terms in their what they do. Nice thing, one side note I'll mention before I turn it back over is that both Houston and Harris County are part of BCEM. So I'm very familiar with your community. So Landy, Richard, back to you all. Do you want me to cover anything else?
In a few.
So let's start off with some questions, and there'll be an opportunity for you to engage. For those of you who are here with us in person, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts, your diversity of perspective. This is why you're here. So please know that there is a time that we will catch up on all the questions that you have.
Let me, Pam, let me take advantage. Pam, and why don't we have Pam go through a little bit of her presentation, because I think it also will add a little bit to some of the perspective. So Pam, why don't you spend a little time with that, and that way you and Ron can play off of your presentation.
Great. I actually think that that's a tremendous place to start right now, because while we all know that the toughest, hardest work goes by those people that are there on the ground, the boots on the ground, but we have to have a federal framework that facilitates and if even promotes, incentivizes people doing the right thing. And I will tell you, I'm a Texas girl. I'm from the Hill Country. I'm from a small town called Marble Falls, just west of Austin. And I have seen how far Texas has come even before Hurricane Ike, through Hurricane Ike, and then of course the 2017 storms. And so as the federal government is trying to grapple with what framework they establish, we've had some really important conversations, particularly in the wake of the 2017 storms. And so I'd like to talk with you about that, because I want you to be thinking about how can I plug into every phase of the disaster conversation, whether it's preparedness and mitigation, response, recovery, and how technology can not only play a role in risk identification, in identifying good projects, in helping deal with issues of equity. These are tremendous issues that we are trying to grapple with at the federal level to drive resilience resources. So every year we do have a couple $2 billion that come available through various agencies. It can be FEMA, it could be HUD, even the Department of Energy is getting on board to focus on hazard mitigation. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about hazard mitigation? We're talking about an action that reduces or eliminates long-term risk to people and property. And let me tell you what the federal government is really, really concerned about. Is it risk reducing and is it cost effective? Now, a lot of you, if you have an engineering background, you're going, oh gosh, how am I going to do a cost benefit analysis for something that's technology? We grappled with this a lot with like seismic indicators and warning systems. Like, how do we quantify that? Get creative, make FEMA tell you, make HUD tell you why you are not cost effective, because you need to illustrate how you are avoiding future damage and how you are increasing resilience. And that's a very broad term. We've seen resilience cover everything from climate change and green nature-based solutions to very structural, the traditional infrastructure conversations that we're dealing with Gray infrastructure. So I would say definitely focus on those future disaster impacts. So particularly in the 2017 storm cycle, in the wake of that, Congress actually started paying attention. You want to know what they started paying attention to? We are on this trajectory of disaster costs and losses that as a nation, we cannot sustain. More severe disasters, more considerable impacts, a huge gap between the insured and the uninsured, something that as taxpayers, we cannot sustain. So what are we going to do? We have learned time and time again that investments pre-disaster to draw down that risk will save us. We're not talking about $1, $2, or even $3 for every dollar invested. We are talking about up to $11 for every $1 invested in pre-disaster mitigation. I don't know about you guys. I'm not making that kind of return on my investments. So pre-disaster mitigation is where it's at. Here on this slide, you see a couple of FEMA and HUD programs that are specifically targeted at mitigation. And the reason I am so focused on federal disasters is exactly what Richard said. This will not be the end all be all final solution, but this is seed money. This is money that now the federal government is committed to allowing communities to leverage to build public-private partnerships, to build innovative solutions, to do creative approaches to risk identification. And this is money, we all know that activity really does follow where the funding is. But one of the things that's very exciting, even just this very week, tomorrow, the House Committee on Ways and Means is having a hearing specifically on what do they need to do as far as tax incentives to continue to drive resilience. And that could be everything from tax benefits. But the wonderful thing is, and Richard is great at this conversation, how do we use tax incentives as financing opportunities? So we're talking about everything from resilience bonds to green bonds, mitigation bonds, to help communities get the resources they need to tap into this. So I'll really quickly go to the final slide because I think that this is probably the most exciting thing. I have been involved in this conversation since the mid-90s. There are things that were passed in the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 that we finally got accomplished after the 2017 storms. There has been a sea change in the philosophy of how the federal government is dealing with this. They are promoting public-private partnerships. They are breaking down the stovepipes. They understand this cannot only be one office's conversation. This can't just be an urban development housing conversation. This can't just be an emergency manager conversation. We have got to provide flexibility, consistency, and truly be able to leverage all of the resources together so that we can ultimately do these huge transformational, unthought of projects. So like I said before, focus on why it can't be done. Make people tell you why it can't be done, because honestly, the sky's the limit. I have talked to so many people in the federal family that are looking for those innovative solutions, and this is where technology is at. We have not even begun to explore the full extent of AI, the full extent of monitoring for risks and vulnerabilities that technology and only technology can bring to bear. So I'm excited to have this conversation today because I really think that this is the point of the spear for driving resilience.
Wow, $11 for every one invested. 11, Pamela, for every one invested. So thank you for opening our eyes to the level of pre-mitigation. Like, what can we do before a disaster happens? Ron, can you share with us from a local, from a city and a municipal perspective, what does this look like? What does it look like for us to bring that to the local level in our city?
Absolutely. And Pam and I didn't practice this together, but I think I'm going to build off what she said nicely because Pam covered the financial side. I want to give you a quick picture of what is emergency management, what is the discipline, what they're dealing with across the country to show you the challenge of this world. And then I'll dive into some specific kind of innovative innovations I think that are needed when you start looking at that. So if you think about the country, right, you have the West, which got a lot of natural disasters, extreme heat, wildfires, mudslides, earthquakes. The middle of the country has blizzards and wildfires. Texas, you all get everything. I don't know how this year you all of a sudden got ice added to your list, but you obviously have the extreme heat and tornadoes and hurricanes. You know, the East Coast has a lot of these hurricanes as well as big snow events or just a lot of rain. But what they're all dealing with as well, every emergency manager today in these big cities, homelessness, civil unrest, diversity issues, and of course the pandemic. So the emergency management community has a lot of things they're trying to handle all at once. It's a massive challenge for them. And as they will all tell you, another challenge is all disasters are local. The feds have a lot of money they provide through grants. They have some resources, but they're not going to come rolling in and solve all the problems. So locals have to be ready. And another challenge is disasters don't stop and wait for the next disaster to finish. Every disaster will happen when it's going to happen. So now, a little bit about who emergency managers are, because I want to get some context around this. Emergency managers are often grouped with fire and police. They clearly are not fire and police. They don't come running in with hoses and guns. Their primary jobs are planning, situational awareness, and coordination. They're facilitators and problem solvers. Their job is to prepare for the worst and think through every angle as to what's going to make that challenge worse. That's what they're doing every day with every incident. They're also, and this is something, again, as innovation perspective, really think about this. They're often in charge of situational awareness for the community. They're trying to find out what is happening and where are the gaps. And you'll see, I'll talk about technologies in a minute. And so the emergency manager's job is to interconnect all of their technologies they're using together to give them a complete visual. That's to give to the first responders, to give their elected officials, and to give to citizens, so everybody understands what's going on around them, and then they can find the right resources to respond. So now I think I'll finally get to your question, and kind of what kind of investments are needed, from my opinion. So I got a few thoughts, and I'm going to build off one of Pam's, but simulation and modeling. Emergency managers really need the tools to help them predict when is a disaster going to happen, or if it is going to happen, what's going to be the true impact. And simply put, how bad is bad? That's what they're trying to answer every day for today and in the future. So anything you can help in that realm, much appreciated. They're trying to predict these potential consequences. Sensors. The better sensors you get out there, the more sensors you get out there, whether it's to predict, water height, water flow of traffic, the impact of an incident on critical infrastructure. They need more sensors out there. They need these sensors to pull in the data in the situational awareness programs they have today. And I truly believe that AI and machine learning are going to improve how they get the situational awareness, how accurate it is, and how timely it is. Because really one of their main goals as an emergency manager is to share information as real time as possible, to project the future, and to coordinate the right resources. So, those are my thoughts, and hopefully those are helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've heard from a federal or government level, okay, here's where the money is, here's where we need help. And then we've heard, here's some ideas, very specific to where there are gaps, where there are opportunities. Now for Richard, we want to hear from you. Let's merge all this together. As the founder of the Resilience Innovation Hub, let's hear from you to connect the dots. What does this look like from our entrepreneurs? What does this look like from our people? How do we connect the dots?
Well, I want to play off of, again, what's already been said. There's no question that the federal government has a bucket of money, and that, as Pam mentioned, there's even more money about ready to flow as it relates to infrastructure, because this administration and Congress are very focused on that we're going to put trillions of dollars of money out for infrastructure. They do want it to be resilient, right? So, but the flip side of it is ultimately public-private philanthropic partnerships. And I mentioned it, and actually I want to reverse the order. It's private, philanthropic, and then public partnerships. What's emerged literally is that we didn't realize until a a year ago that there are over 400 individuals within the national and global insurance reinsurance that drive investment. So most of us think that the insurance companies, write a policy, we pay a premium. God forbid we end up having to file a claim of some kind. We get a check back, move on. Well, in reality, there's a lot more opportunities within the insurance industry, all right? And as such, what they refer to as a risk transfer.
Okay.
You and I pay them to, in a sense, own our risk at a future date. But what happens is those premiums all accumulate into billions, if not trillions of dollars that ultimately have to be invested somehow. So a lot of us who may have been around real estate development have seen Prudential or other types of insurance companies actually as co-investors with that infrastructure. That's now not just the only part of their investment strategy. What they are looking at, and part of the opportunity here in Houston and across the country, is to look at technology, equipment, and data science as investments. Why? Because if they invest in your technology, you are eventually going to limit their future claims and payouts.
So we reduce on the front end.
Yes, and that way they're looking at it in a scenario. I have Geico car insurance. Not that I'm pitching Geico, but I have Geico car insurance. If you remember, when you get your car, you call up and they ask you a couple of questions. Do you have anti-lock brakes, a rear view camera, a surround kind of alert system, and check mark, check mark, check mark, discount, discount, discount. What's emerging now is the property and casualty. That's the buildings, the facilities, the operations. The flood insurance side are now looking at how to incentivize, as Pam said, at a federal level, within the private sector insurance reinsurance community, they are looking at how to build in incentives.
Okay.
All right. Last part of it is that we now know, as Pam said, it's a 1 to 11. Pam, I always use the more conservative. 1 to 4 is a baseline. 1 to 11 is the full end. And like you said, that's one hell of a return on investment. Why would the insurance industry miss that opportunity to invest in projects and technologies? But also, what we are finding is, for example, I didn't know that Nature Conservancy, which is a phenomenal nonprofit, has a venture fund. And so do a number of other foundations and family offices who are now investing. It could be around climate, it could be around nature-based, it could be around diversity. But what they are doing now is investing in resilience at a level that we've never seen before, except it's been unstructured for the moment. And that is a part of what we're hoping will come together through you all and others across the country, is how do we actually structure the opportunities for the investments to be made, and for you as entrepreneurs and innovators to actually be a part of not just the solution, but the return on investment.
I'm about that conversation. What about you all? Heck yeah. Heck yeah was the response. And I saw some heads shaking, some heads nodding, saying, yes, we're familiar with that, right? So wow, such nuggets. I'm like, where do I start? Let me start here. Perspectives. You all have shared, the three of you have shared perspectives. And I want to ask a question. Each of you have described a unique perspective on connecting technology companies, innovation, different opportunities for resilience, things that we may have not, different solutions that didn't exist before. I heard data. I'm excited about that as a data scientist. That is the way to look at, okay, what does this look like in the future? Predictive behaviors, AI, machine learning. We heard all of these things. So my question to you is, each of you have described a unique perspective on connecting tech companies, money, and the folks who have it, the decision makers. Can you please connect the end users, the disaster and risk mitigation market with very specific pieces of advice that you would either give to an investor, an entrepreneur, a procurement company, or those who are attending today? What specific 1 or 2 pieces of advice would you give? Ron, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'll try. So I got kind of 3 ideas on that very quick. One is look at ways to pilot what you're doing. Don't go big too fast. Because again, this challenge, as I mentioned, when you start looking at a big market, which I'm assuming that's where you want to go, is that every market across the country is slightly different. So go small, try in a few places, see what's working, and tweak the technology from there, and test it before you go for big purchases. One thing to remember that, when you're talking about government perspective, they have all taken a massive, massive hit this last year. Local, state, and federal governments have very little money. So don't go big. The second one, as Pam mentioned, and Pam's better to talk about this than I am, try to tie your procurements or your technologies to a grant. What's the problem it's solving? And is there a grant out there that locals can use to buy your technology and help them identify that? Do not assume that locals understand all the grants. There are a lot of them, they're confusing. And the third one, try to understand the local procurement vehicles. And that's where you can partner with other companies. Find companies that are embedded in various localities and states, ones that already know the procurement vehicles, and team with them. That's the fastest way to get the money. So kind of my three pieces. Pam?
Ron, you couldn't be more spot on with the need to pilot. So let me make sure that folks in the room and online understand the conversations that I have every day with regard to disaster mitigation and disaster resilience. I talk to communities that don't even know how to start the conversation. They don't know what risks they face. They don't know their most vulnerable populations. And they certainly don't know what the best practices and the lessons learned. They don't even know what is available out there. They don't know funding sources. They don't know potential solutions. And this is exactly where Richard has a leg up on everyone. He is trying to educate people. He is connecting needs with solutions. And that is exactly what every local government in our country is hungry for. They need help doing that. And so our private sector partners have the ability to convene people, align shoulder to shoulder with people that have like objectives, and bring perspectives to the table that have never before been there to come up with creative solutions. It's education, it's expanding bandwidth. As Ron said, these local governments, so many of these emergency managers wear 5, 6, 7 hats, and they're always worried about the next boom, right? The next bomb that's going off, the next catastrophe that's going to be impacting their community. So how can you leverage your solution, your relationships, your community to bring these resources to bear to expand their capacity and their capability? Because they are hungry for solutions and they are hungry for people to come to the table. Richard, you just mentioned something amazing that I keep harping on, particularly in this new environment that we are in, and that is private sector and prioritizing what I consider their ESG strategies, their environmental social governance strategies. So those are investment strategies that the private sector is driving hundreds of millions to billions of dollars into public and private sector investments for these solutions, because they need to help drive solutions. They need to help draw down risk. And this is that good social justice investment that these big companies are driving for. So connect with those companies, show them your solution. And I love Ron's idea. Like, I have told so many people, put it on one page. What is it? Where have you seen it work? Choose a pilot where you know it will be successful. Find that place where you know your solution will be successfully implemented and get the biggest bang for its buck, because success breeds more success. And then you start illustrating that. And I've even worked with folks to almost get a template, a grant template. Here is what we would apply for if there are federal funds available. And this is what it would look like. You guys are in the position to absolutely put that together and hand it over to local government and be like, we've got great solutions for you. But you can be involved at every phase of that to truly be a force multiplier to what the government can do.
Let me, so I'm going to go to the other side of the coin. This is a conversation, by the way, that most folks do not want to have. People don't want to talk about disasters and risk and mitigation. I mean, be honest about it. I mean, there's a lot of other conversations about converting from oil and getting away from carbon and healthcare and all. And I'm not diminishing or making fun or making light of any of those. However, I want to put in context why I think this is such a critical issue. Those of you in Houston, again, will recall that in the past 18 months, the Houston ship channel has been closed down because of fires and explosions, right? All right, at $100 million a day. All right. When you lose $1 trillion on the US Gulf Coast over the past decade, that's real money. So I'm going to be real blunt about it. There is a part, we're focused on nature-based, we're focused on a lot of aspects of disaster. Let me just be blunt. At a certain point, it starts adding up. As we used to say in Washington, D.C., a dollar here, a dollar there, well, it adds up to a couple billion, $1 billion. I'm talking about trillions of dollars of losses, not just to governments and corporations. Think about the small business that cannot operate anymore because they cannot make deliveries. We'll hear about one of those solutions in a second, okay? When you can't reopen because you're trying to convince people it's okay to come back into your operations in your office. And oh, by the way, this isn't the last of the pandemics, and we'll have another flu season. You'll hear about one of those, right? You'll hear about the issue about fires in a little bit, right? If you go to Oregon right now, 90% of Oregon was on fire at one point over the past 2 to 3 years. That's real impact. So what I want to emphasize is, as entrepreneurs and innovators, start first and foremost, to be very blunt, with the economic value proposition. What are you going to do to make somebody's life, their operations, their community, not quote unquote get back to normal? There is no such thing as getting back to normal. We're just going ahead, right? The pivot. But the fact is that you as entrepreneurs and innovators, investors, both here present and listening online, I am now convinced that your opening pitch has got to be, I recognize what kind of loss that you've had. What I'm prepared to do is help you mitigate the future loss of life, facilities, operations, community. Then the last piece that I'll add to this is, why am I so, and why should all of us be so concerned about the procurement process? It's something pretty simple. We still procure in government these days the same way in most cases that we always have. I want to move sand from here to here. And I'm going to tell you as an entrepreneur and innovator that I want the bucket to have these 4 wheels of these different colors. The handle has to be this long, and hell with that. Just tell me that you want to move the sand from here to here by this point and how much. And I'll, as an entrepreneur, figure it out. And by the way, I'll get the data that says, here's how much it cost before, here's how much it costs now, and by the way, I can do the data analytics on it, right? So part of what I think Pam and Ron can help do, and what they are already doing in a lot of us, are to persuade government procurement to be much more innovative in offering solutions to entrepreneurs and innovators. Because if you're a big company, that doesn't, tends to be a lot easier. So my 2 points: 1, the economics; 2, go into this procurement process with your eyes wide open. But the reality is that there's a lot of ways to change, and that's what we want to work with folks on, is that there's ways of getting into the procurement cycle, right?
Wow, well said. Very well said. Thank you to each of you. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Pamela. your insights, your ideas, your connection to the solution. Remember, we're bringing both sides of ourselves to work, right? We're bringing our whole self. So what I heard you say, Richard, was there has been a way that we've done things, and it has gotten us to where we are today. Well, this ain't that. That's my ain't. You all got that? Ron, I've been working on it. I'm from Chicago, but I've been working on my Texas.
I'm going to practice that too.
Okay, so this ain't that. What do I mean by that? So when we look at ourselves, when we look at our circles, when we're deciding what's next and what's new, in order to create something that is different, to solve problems differently, we have to pull in different resources. And so what I heard you say, Richard, was you spoke to this factor of looking at risk and mitigating risk before it happens, and speaking to that, selling the fact that there is the opportunity to invest dollars, there is money, there is funding, there are ideas, there are ways that we've done it before that actually will not sustain us in the future.
Let me, I want to ask Ron something you just heard. Ron, because you deal so often with city and county governments who have this procurement cycle, it's always easier for them to go with a company that they know, a big brand. How does an entrepreneur and innovator, what's the best way to get the access, send the signal, engage with those decision makers? Because I think that's, again, one of those things that's almost people talking past each other. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I really would like you to emphasize, what is the best way to engage with city and county offices of emergency management, homeland security folks that are making these decisions?
You pray you find the right person. Now, in all seriousness, I think if I could boil this down to a couple of pieces of advice, be hyper focused on the problem you're solving. You have to get that right. Don't assume they know the problem you're solving. And that goes back to the pilots we talked about earlier. That will help you figure out what are those real problems and what's your role in solving that. Also talk a lot about interoperability. How does your technology work with other technologies? They can't afford to have proprietary systems that don't engage with other systems anymore. If your system's collecting data and you say, oh, I'm going to give you a great dashboard, but that data can't share with a different system, they are not going to buy your system. It's as simple as that. It has to have an API where you're sharing data. And the last thing, Richard, and this one's a massive challenge, by the way, bigger than all these other things combined, probably. Look at your cost model. What can you do from a cost model perspective to start low and be creative in how they can fund the starting point to get them using your technology, understanding how it uses, so you can build it out. And that's a big challenge, because as Richard touched on, the challenge with the government procurement system is it's fundamentally broken. It's too slow, too much process, for all the right reasons, by the way. They need bureaucracy for a reason, but it is slow, and they're not used to different cost models, but come in with different ideas. And so hyper-focused, interoperability, and look at your cost models. A couple of ideas. I bet Pam has probably 30 other ideas too.
That's a start. Anything else, Richard?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
So,
Can you all hear me? Yes.
so maybe as you've seen the landscape emerge here in Houston around innovation and entrepreneurs and the opportunities to bring in a lot of new entrepreneurs and innovators, how can we do a better job of engaging in a topic that, like I mentioned, is, I mean, it's not quote unquote sexy, you know, but it's trillions of dollars, all right? When you think about different communities, different types of businesses that you work with, what would be a good communications message that all of us, entrepreneurs and innovators, not just in Houston but other places, what would be a good message that would make that work? you didn't expect that.
I didn't expect that at all. So let me switch hats and brains. I would say two things. One is it's this conversation that we've been having about the reality that what we're facing, what we're talking about, you know, disaster, risk mitigation, these are not sexy topics, they're scary. Like they're ugly and yucky. And it takes something, trying to figure out what do I do next. I remember, if I could share this story really quickly, I remember when Hurricane Harvey hit. I promise you, I'm getting the chills telling you this. I said, I'll take a snowstorm any day. Because water, I can't move. I can move snow, I can get a shovel, but I couldn't move. So to try to process how do I do something different with what I'm faced with? It was this level of change when I was talking to you about the change curve. There was a level of denial that I went through initially, and that lasted for a very short period of time. Because what I did was I pivoted, I shifted my business. And I shifted my business model because I saw so many leaders trying to get back to business as usual. Let me try to get back to work. Let me look like everything's okay and look like everything's normal. And I've asked the question today, how many of you, for you, is this your first time? Yes, we're trying to get back to work and back to normal. But the reality is we are bringing those things that we're suppressing and pushing down to try not to think about. Oh, my family is at home. I'm here trying to figure out how to make this work. And what I would invite you to consider is those that are around you, those people who may not be the obvious choice, right? I bring a different perspective just because of who I am. Because I think about snow, I say, you know what? I can see that I can help those same people who have this way of looking at things, very analytical. Pamela spoke to the engineers in the room, my CTOs, my CIOs. I love having the conversation to say, who is it that you're missing? Because the reality is, if you don't have a diversity of perspective, you have an incomplete perspective. Think about that. If I can't see the whole picture, the whole room, because everybody in the room looks like who I am, I'm missing a part of the perspective. Who's it impacting? Who's it affecting? So to wrap up the answer to your question, what can we do different? It takes something. Let's start there. Let's start there. It takes something. And when I say look at your circle, look at what's around you, look at how you're solving the problem. I love, Richard, when you said, hey, there's money over here, but then there's also money on the front end. And then there's also money that has been allocated from all these premiums for doing the right thing, right? For having the anti-lock brakes. So having the conversations with those who, I love that I'm in here and I'm breathing fresh air. I feel different about the air that I'm breathing. Why? Breathing. Why? Because somebody thought about a solution. Be hyper-focused on the problem that we're solving. And then look at the perspective of those who are solving that problem. And I invite you to shift your perspective. If you're looking at it the same way, I said it before, Richard, this ain't that, right? So we have to bring a different perspective to the conversation.
So as we're segueing to a little bit of the technology showcase, there's a reason why I asked you the question and to play off of what Ron and Pam said. And this is my last piece of advice to entrepreneurs, innovators, and investors. Don't be a hammer in search of nails. You got to ask people, really, like you said, lots of different perspectives, lots of different decision makers. But if you're going in saying, here's a hammer, all right, I don't need that hammer. I need this hammer. And I think that's sometimes where we get so enthusiastic as entrepreneurs and innovators. You know, I can only think about all the times that, you know, I'm sitting in the car and kind of go, man, I wish somebody would do that, right? But I think that's the open challenge to all of us is, don't be the hammer in search of nails. Find out what the communities are saying. So let's segue in. Mike, come on up. We'll have to do. We're gonna. You say right where you are, and then we're gonna sit next to you one by one. You don't have to lose that, and we'll get you set up. But kind of see you next to Landon.
know. Get started.
Yes, ma'am.
Hear me okay?
Make sure that it's all on. It's probably on mute.
What about now?
Perfect.
Good.
Pamela, okay, yes, thumbs up, thank you. So, please introduce yourself if you would. Nano Shield, eco-friendly, fireproofing and insulation. Before you say this, I just want to tell you all, I met a wild forest firefighter who crosses all of these different states, to fight fire. So I'm super excited to meet you, my friend.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Please do share, give us about 5 minutes about what you do, who you are, what problem are you solving?
Sure. Yeah, so this is the first presentation that I've done in about a year with my pants on. So, and I might turn real quickly trying to find my kids barging in the door, but we'll see how it goes. So I have a couple videos. I don't know if we want to play those as I'm talking. So my name is Mike Francis. I'm the CEO of Nanotech, and we have a grand mission. We want to fireproof the world. And what's crazy about it is we actually think we can do it. We are an early stage startup. We raised our seed round in December of 2020. We raised $5 million. We're the first participant, a part of Halliburton Labs, which is an outstanding accelerator focused on clean energy. So somehow we tricked them into partnering with us. I still have to pinch myself every time that I go to that facility. We work out of about $100 million laboratory. We're building our plant directly in their facility, which gives us supply chain, gives us infrastructure, people, etc. So it's been a game changer for us.
So we're going to show the video if we can.
So how our technology works. So how our technology, can you hear me still? It's cheesy music. I do these things with my kids. How the technology works is we have a patented molecule that can be embedded into paints, polymers, resins, plastics, epoxies, drywall, cement, and it inherits our fireproofing capabilities. So this is a plastic bottle that we've coated with our NanoShield product. It will fireproof to 1800 degrees Celsius. And the importance of that is, most carbon fires burn at about 1200 degrees Celsius. So we can fireproof any structure or any time period. We're not time rated. Our product will actually last days as long as it stays below that 1800 degrees Celsius. The other cool things about it is environmentally friendly, so there are no affordable VOCs. We can spray it on any surface. We can spray it on any structure. And I was really scared doing this, by the way. We'll watch this for a second. So that was a 3,000 degree torch. I was like, should I put my hand under it? Should I put my hand under it? So it was going for about 4 minutes with 3,000 degrees. And there you have it. The water was lukewarm. I was still very nervous doing that. My kids were laughing at me. And so we can spray it on any surface. We can embed it into drywall itself. We can embed it into epoxies. We can embed it into paint. We produce no smoke. So if you're familiar with the ASTM ratings, we produce no smoke. We produce no flame spread. And there's virtually nothing that we can't fireproof. So you can see why we're so excited about it. We're working with everybody from the state of California, PG&E, Southern Cal Edison. We're hoping to go on about 1 million utility poles per year, fingers crossed. We also work with chemical plants, builders, architects, etc. So one of our challenges is we have so many markets and so many things to go after. It's tough to do that with a 10-person team, so we're scaling up. The other cool thing that I'll mention is it's also an insulator. So at just 1 millimeter thickness, it has an R value of R4. So within 5 millimeters, it's the equivalent of about 6 inches of spray foam. And then the other cool thing is when we embed it into spray foam itself, which is just polyurethane, it'll increase the insulation capabilities by about 50%. The final thing is we meet the technical commercial envelope. So we're not too expensive. We're kind of in that sweet spot. We have the lowest thermal conductivity on the planet at 0.05 0.017 watts per meter Kelvin. So we're actually lower than the NASA aerogels, and we don't cost $5,000 a bucket, just for just a couple $100 a bucket. That's what we're up to. We appreciate all the support that we get from this awesome Houston innovation community, and look forward to potentially partnering with you all in the future.
Did you say you're working with Campfire? Did you hear me? This is Ron. Can you hear me?
Campfire, like, I'm so excited. Wow. Do we have time for questions, Richard?
Yes, ma'am.
For a question?
Have you
Please.
had cases where like a fire goes through a community and you have like nano-shield houses versus one that isn't, or anything like that? Or is that still, would that be in the future?
Yeah, not yet, but what we want to do is we want to build a house, and potentially you can drop it in a like Oregon or California and have it be the last thing standing. We are starting to fireproof several Napa vineyards, so we'll have some case studies there. It's the only cool places that we've gone so far are Alabama and Indiana, so we're really excited about going to Napa.
That's what I was thinking.
But yeah, we have quite a few case studies under our belt, but nothing nothing like that to mention. But we do have a lot of certifications. We're testing with the U.S. military, testing with the Navy. We've passed a lot of offshore tests that are needed. We've passed a lot of UL ratings and UL tests. So we've now achieved all those certifications. So we're going big.
Thank you for that demonstration. The question just for you all, folks who are online, was about the communities. Thank you so much for not just answering the question and showing up big today, but wearing pants and being ready for next. So we hear opportunities to connect with funding. There is more to come, obviously. You spoke about certifications and some of the things that you're doing to ramp up. This is an example. This is an example of showcasing what solving a problem looks like in a very big way. I am grateful for this conversation and wish you best of luck. Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Great.
You just want to hold it for me. So welcome, Santiago.
Thank you.
There was a point that the rest of our audience who is online, hi Pamela, there was a point that we discussed who you are and how we get to be in this safe space. Today, can you tell us a little bit more about your business, exactly who you are and which problem you are solving?
Absolutely. So my name is Santiago Mendoza Jr., and I actually work for Integrated Architecture, which is an invention of Monzo Varane, who actually owns MediStar Corporation as well, which is a healthcare development company construction. So back in March, Monzer, he's an engineer, a little bit of background. He has a degree from the French Institute in mathematics and physics, then several other degrees from the University of Texas, which is structural engineering and architecture. He's also a composer and conductor of classical music.
So both sides of the brain, you know, that's my language.
Very talented. So in March, when all this was happening, Monzer said, how do we engineer ourselves out of this upcoming mess? And he started going, and he's got several other inventions and that he's done in patents in the past. But he took his idea to the superconductivity lab at the University of Houston, where Dr. Chu, the father of superconductivity science, and they assisted in further developing it to ensure that it was able to maintain the heat inside. So feel free later on when you're up on it, feel it. It is not warm or hot to the touch. Also, the air that comes out also is actually room temperature. It does not affect the room temperature at all. But hear this, the filter that is inside, the nickel mesh foam filter, heats up to 180 degrees Celsius. We're talking almost 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Once we did that with the University of Houston, we took it to the Galveston National Lab, which is in Galveston, only one of two labs that actually deal with actual viruses, not synthetic viruses like you hear and read of a bunch of other filtration companies. Not only that, but it was the first time in the history of the world that a virus was tested in aerosol, in the air. So it was pushed 270-fold, and it actually killed the coronavirus, the actual virus, at 99.999% instantly.
Shanti, why don't we show the video?
Let's go. Yes, sir.
And
Because you only get me 40 minutes to talk.
No, no.
Oh.
I saw the effect of COVID-19 on people and on their life. People are suffering. They are without jobs. People are suicidal. This is not good. We cannot continue our life like this with masks and so on. No, we have to find solution that kill the virus.
Always committed to healthy buildings, and that pandemic, he said, how are we going to reopen our school? How to bring people back to work?
So the housekeeper, she made a mistake. She put cheese, and put it in the toaster. And she went to clean upstairs. All of a sudden, the whole smoke coming all over. And the toaster. I said, yeah, I can do the same thing, by heating the air and killing the, COVID-19.
Monster came with the invention to use heat. And so we turned to the Center for Texas Superconductivity at the University of Houston. And Monster was told Dr. Rand and Dr. Chu, we need to use a conductive metal that's porous, that is able to not only conduct electricity and get to a target temperature to kill the coronavirus, but also it doesn't pass on that heat to the ambient air.
When I first heard at the heat to kill the virus, I thought it's a very good idea. It's pretty simple idea also, because any stuff cannot resist the heat too much above 100 degrees C. But the detail is really how to work out the device to demonstrate that without impacting the air conditioning system. So we have been running day and night, sometimes very late, sometimes very early in the morning.
Work around the clock. We had fight against time.
That brought the idea of using
That's the actual device that
But the
was.
challenge was Picophone is too electrically conducting. And with too electrically conducting, the current just goes through, go by, and then without no heating. So we have to increase the resistance. And the one clear idea, you increase resistance, you increase the length. So that's why you do the pleating and just like the regular filter. That works.
I tried to put my finger next to it, but not feel the heat. Then I made a mistake by touching the bottom of my finger.
It's simply a filter by design. The only difference being that the separators on the upstream side are the foam nickel material instead of aluminum. It's taking existing building technology that we use every day in hospitals, in schools, in office buildings, and really just supercharging it for the COVID pandemic.
So then we took that to Dr. Fessler and his team at the Galveston National Lab. That was breakthrough research. And we were able to show an instantaneous cure in a single pass of actual SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. So we increased the concentration of the viral load up to over 270-fold, the highest concentration that had ever been tested. We actually got even a more profound result, 99.999% kill.
This invention is backed by so many, by professors, by material.
That led to this bullet that plugged into the wall, designed for big spaces, small spaces, face-to-face encounter.
We have seen Monster involved in many different types of inventions before IVP era.
He was one of the first ones to adopt use tensioning, which is a methodology of building concrete slabs. Slabs are great. He did a great job of it.
The next invention was skimmer, or skimmer. I think it's the fast. The third invention is hurricane brakes for that withstand category 4 and category 5.
So under the premier building, medical related buildings.
That's the Texas A&M Medical Engineering Medical School. In medical school, building that as well.
Leadership that conduct, we need to have the right people to lead that conduct our system.
Rodeo put together the marketing people, the medical people, all sorts of people together working very quickly. Without Mother Rodeo, that's not possible here.
Very mobilized team, shepherd the team to really outpace any other technology, probably in history.
Monster did that because he's going not fame in scientific journals, but because he wants to help people who are suffering and wants to solve a problem for the country and can't get back on its feet until the pandemic is addressed.
Our research to include coronavirus, influenza, and potential future pandemic.
And those people
That is huge for employment,
other
worker
viruses
productivity.
Reality is it kills COVID. Reality is on property of hotels, restaurants, office space, to have these in their lobby will be a hedge. Because you're clearing out your lobby of viruses.
It's one of the greatest inventions of our times, and I don't know.
We're already in the George
exaggerate.
Brown Convention
Maybe the
Center,
greatest invention of the
MD
millennium.
Anderson, Houston Methodist, and many others, and schools especially.
Big venues. I would get back to going to church, different things like that. You know what? We struggle right now, and it's tough, but this is what's needed.
That's what provides cleaner, efficient, safer schools. Over 90% of our students back on campus learn in classrooms with their peers and with their teachers, and it's absolutely amazing.
Roger is a force to be reckoned with, but look at what this did to him.
All the time I spent, and all the time that I work, this work for me, this is the most beautiful thing I have in my life.
Monza definitely deserves a Nobel Prize. I don't think it's peace, it's maybe save the world type prize. Because what he's invented will change the way we live.
Monza, we want you to know how grateful we are that you came up with this phenomenal invention.
I want to congratulate you, your ENR Award of Excellence. I think it's pretty sensational.
Monza always tell us we're going to Mars, but yet we have to wear a mask at home. But hopefully with IVP, mask away.
I'll be glad to get one of your filters and get rid of this permanently.
So, Monza, thank you again for your work on IVP, and look forward to you receiving your award.
This was born here in Houston, so we're very, very proud of that. Second thing is that we talked earlier about grants out there, monies out there that's out that can be used for this. We actually worked together. We did the homework, just like you guys talked earlier about, and we showed the schools we showed companies, hospitals, how to tap into the CARES Act. And they were actually able to use the CARES Act for our product. You know, Galveston ISD bought over 250 of these units. Every single classroom has it on there. All their teachers are back and all that. That was very important to monitor. Let's get our students back. Let's get our teachers back. Our kids cannot be, you know, in the homes. In April the 8th, alongside, he was named last year's American Society of Mechanical Engineers of the year. He was also named by the Engineering News Record as Engineer of the Year for 2020 and 2021. And that was bestowed on him on April the 8th of last month. So we're super proud. We're excited. We are retrofitting HVAC systems. We have several. Tomorrow, a press release went out today. I don't know if it's already in the air. I've been here. It's already out. We actually have a 12-inch mobile unit. You can fit it in your backpack. Travel. Take it with you to your hotel. I'm getting a couple of those for my kids so they can put in their dorm and all that.
So when we think of what you just said, you said this is homegrown. This is Houston, right? This is also what it looks like when we put innovation, we put the people side of who we are, along with the expertise, knowledge, wisdom of tech, and put all of those things together. And we have something that has changed already the lives of many. Thank you, Santiago.
This
Thank
is
you so much.
going to change indoor air quality.
Thank you.
Can I just see the name of the product or the company or both?
So IVP is short for Integrated Bioprotection. Bioprotection. This right here is the R1 model. It's for rooms. The T1 is for travel. And then we have a large venue, which are the ones that are at the Georgia Brown Convention Center.
And they can find more information on ivp.com.
IVPair.com.
IVPair.com.
Yes, yes, yes. But I'll be more than happy also to answer your questions. I've got cards and all that.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
Santiago. We
Thank
appreciate
y'all
you.
for
Absolutely. So we have one more innovator. Oh, I'm super excited about this woman. It's been a while, but Rahel, I know that you, when I think about solving problems, when I think about what innovation looks like, I thought you brought one with you. Be careful. Oh, this is good. This is good. So Santiago just spoke about the fact that we can breathe again. Like that's a thing, you know, and what I saw were the children. So that got me emotional. I have two kids who they've been back for 6 weeks. I have a senior. He has no prom, no all of that stuff because of COVID. And so the reality of connecting solutions and being hyper focused on that problem, Ron spoke to that. He really spoke to that. Now it's time for you to speak to it. Please introduce who you are and share what problem are you solving and why you are here.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. My name is Rahel Abraham, and I am addressing the #1 natural disaster we face in the U.S., and that's flooding. And so, like Lynn spoke on before, I was part of the Hurricane Harvey casualties of loss, and I did not realize until I went through that, the helplessness and the amount of work to rebuild afterwards, which for many of us took, you know, over a year or so. And at that moment, I realized we have to deal with this every season, and yet we are going to be in the same situation every season. And I wanted to address some last line defense. It's really good to be able to track where water's flowing and, you know, the fact that you need to have flood insurance. And yet for me, I wanted a practical solution because at the end of the day, loss is still burdensome on us, right? And so at that moment, I realized that as an engineer, I could figure out a way to at least mitigate something, which is to me, the loss of vehicles, because in Houston, you need your vehicles. I mean, how do you get around to buy the supplies you need to bring back to your home so that you can start cleaning, right? And that's the struggle that I had to go through. And so I created a product that was portable, using my chemical engineering science understanding, really resilient when it comes to being able to use different times of the year without it breaking down essentially, but yet it's still recyclable. It's reusable, and it could cover your car or all your home goods inside your home and within 5 minutes and protect you from flooding. So that's essentially what, and this is a report from Hurricane Harvey, right? We had over half a million cars lost, but 1 million in total if you count Maria and Irma, which happened later on that year. And that was equivalent to about $3 billion in loss according to insurance on claims for just cars alone. And this is just noting that hurricanes are like the largest one we hear about on a national level, but flooding itself, just from rainstorms like what we experienced this week, it's going on right now in Louisiana, unfortunately, it's a $10 billion problem, and that's just not even counting the hurricanes. And then that's when the scale just goes off the charts. Also, it's an increasing problem because we have something called urban development. And so due to human activity as well as climate change, we're not able to mitigate that. So this is basically the duffel bag of which my product comes in. I have some samples here, and it's like a one-stop. It's a very simple setup by one person. You lay it flat on the floor, you drive your car on top. Like I said, you use it inside your house as well. Cover it up and you zip it sealed, and at that point it becomes buoyant. It'll rise with water and it'll receive back down with water just as softly. It is anchorable as well in case you use it outside, and it's reusable, like I said. So it's very simple, but yet it was very effective. So it's something to keep on hand every season and not worry about losing it all in case there's a flood. These are some numbers that I wanted to show those of you who were trying to understand like the impacts as far as the financial impacts, right? So, and on average, Hurricane Harvey, the insurance reported each car costs roughly $12,000. And this product itself is reusable and costs under $400, so it's less deductible. And so, you know, just do the math, you know, you save 10 times plus more. And if paired with insurance or with the government, because if those who have like flood insurance, for example, you get reimbursed up to $1,000 if you have a flood insurance policy that's funded by FEMA for a product like Climate Guard. So in a sense, it becomes covered depending on how you acquire it. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So I'm like, did she just like throw that in there? Like, oh, that's it. So what you're seeing, we've only seen each other maybe twice.
Yes, because during COVID, it's hard to get.
Right. And so the places that we've come together has been places of innovation. We don't know each other. We haven't had wine for the vineyards, right? Saving the vineyard. We come together because this concept of innovation and this perspective and being able to see that I'm the change that I want to see.
Yes.
This is why we connected up here. Like in seconds, you heard me say, hey girl,
yes.
Right? I didn't say that to Santiago. Santiago, next time I see you, I say, hey.
Yeah.
All right.
Not hey girl.
No,
hey girl.
I don't do hey girl. Okay. I wanted to make that point because the reality is when we look at the resilience, when we look at the innovation hub and the potential for next, when we look at what this looks like, it looks like this. It looks like the solutions. Again, that left side and that right side. It looks like, let me create something different that is affecting me right here today. $400, $399.
Yes.
Right? To mitigate not having a car in Houston. Let's just start there, just to mitigate that, or the pain and the additional fear and anxiety and the stress that comes along with this thing called flooding.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention as we close out, we're showcasing some of Houston's finest. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, campfire.co. So not com, just co.co.
This small?
Yes, this is the product, and it can cover entire car or your living room set. And like I said, it's reusable. So. Yes, and recyclable material as well. So.
Wow. So Richard, you're here because?
Well, I'm gonna take over, but I want to thank Rodeo for all of what she continues to do. And we're gonna wrap up on a couple of things, some excitement. Thank you, Rodeo.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, Kelly, can you come up here real quick? So So this is short and sweet. Thank you for everything that you've been doing for us. And thank you so much. No. So thank you for everything that you've been doing for us and for making this entire week happen and for opening up the building for us. So this is yours. You can carry that out. It is a little, you always see that help. You can carry that out. You can carry 4 of them. All right. But thank you. We wanted you to have this, and we're going to present one more tonight at the reception. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. So, a couple of announcements. We're going to do something that they don't expect, and we're running last few minutes. All right. If you'll, so Team Bowie, I don't know who's going to come up and join us, but a couple of weeks ago, a couple months ago now, we helped co-host and introduce at Rice University an Inventathon hackathon. I hate the word hackathon, but these are our winners who represent what I thought would be fun to take just a few minutes. I only pulled 4 of your slides, so I don't know who's going to come up and say something, but yeah, come up and you'll have to share.
Richard.
Come over here, sit for a few minutes, and got a little bit of your presentation.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? I guess.
Yep.
So yeah, there's one member of our team, Kendrick, that could make it today. It's actually up in Chicago. But yeah, basically we were presented with an idea, which was to attempt to mitigate the impacts of natural disasters.
Yeah, we had 48 hours to come up with a solution based on the problem presented by the Innovation Hub. And our solution is a platform that helps incentivize individuals. Specifically, we're targeting low income and other vulnerable communities to take preemptory mitigating actions and incentivizing them to do that. So, for example, providing some type of reduction on insurance premium, even maybe Amazon gift card, things like that for them to take actions like fixing, maybe a leak in their washing machine hose.
Or even stupid things like putting your lawn furniture away before a storm comes through.
Yeah, so we're in the very early stages. We just started working on this during the competition earlier this year, but we're going to continue working on it over the summer and into next semester, and want to get a prototype created, get a platform out there and start testing it in a few communities here in Houston.
So I threw this to them at the very last minute, and that's the great thing about entrepreneurs and innovators is they know how to spring into action real quick. But thank y'all for one, coming up with the idea, two, for your enthusiasm of wanting to continue to move forward. So I know that this is, what you now heard is 4 sets of entrepreneurs. All right. One thing I want to emphasize is we've gone from one of the oldest, most successful entrepreneurs in the way of Mansour to some of the youngest, which proves that it crosses no boundaries of age, race, creed, location, whatever. We need everybody as a part of this. So for the purposes of Tech Rodeo, what we wanted to do is show you a number of examples of what can be created by really smart individuals that just think outside, not of the box, but just completely think outside the scope. So with that, I want to leave one other announcement, Landy, and that is that we are, now that COVID is maybe behind us and that we're reopening, that on September 30th, October 1st, we will hold the first annual National Resilience Innovation Investment Forum here in Houston. that last day of September, first day of October. It follows on the heels of the 4 or 5 investor forums that we did that were primarily targeted for water. And in this case, it is the whole array of technologies and interest. And most importantly, what we are looking to do is bring all kinds of investor community from around the world, frankly, here in Houston. And it will start moving the investor forum around. And so September 30th, October 1st, we're announcing the first annual investor forum around resilience innovation. I want to conclude by thanking Landy so much for her council guidance. Moderation, and then I really want to thank Ron and Pam. Pam has been an energizer bunny to me from her work at the BuildStrong Coalition. If it wasn't for Pam, there would not be probably a BRIC program. Single-handedly, she really worked behind the scenes to move it. Ron and I have known each other for quite some time, and it's great that we're reconnected. So to Pam and Ron, thank you so much for participating today. Their links and contact information, we'll get that out to everybody. This presentation will be, has been recorded, and it'll be on the Tech Rodeo, but we're also going to distribute it out. And with that, thank you so much. And if you would like to stay, we're going to immediately cut over in about 5 minutes to a launch pad, which is downstairs below us, which is a partnership between Central Houston, the Kennedy Imaging, and a whole set of great new accelerators and incubators from around the United States that put footprints here. So thank you all for joining us, both physically here and those online. And if you'd like to, we're going to cut over again in about 5 minutes to the launch pad. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
There's also some filters down at the launch pad.